Okay, perfect. Well, I think we should go ahead and get started just because we have a pretty packed agenda in a short period of time. So, Mark and I want to make sure that we are able to get through the content. So the goal of today, we're gonna go through and talk about data governance 101 and what are we seeing in higher ed. And being able to create a framework and those drivers and the ability to go ahead and get started. So I'll go ahead and let Mark introduce himself, and then I'll introduce myself. And then I think, again, we have a small enough audience that we can go ahead and have some of you introduce yourselves as well. So Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Mark Janowicz, I'm a solutions architect with CTI, specializing in our higher ed practice.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. And Ryan Glasunow, I'm our Senior Director of Data Governance and Privacy. So I lead our segment here in North America at Informatica. So been a practitioner prior to my role at Informatica, so know what it's like to be in a lot of the shoes of people getting started and trying to get a program off the ground. So, I'd love to just go ahead and just quickly round robin across the room and just have folks introduce themselves. So I'll just kind of ask people in order I'm seeing on the screen. Ryan Hendricks. Okay. Elizabeth. Oh, you might be muted. So no problem.
Thanks,
Let's go
Kevin.
Ahead and do this.
No, Kevin unmuted me. So I'm
Oh.
Elizabeth Riley. I work in our data analysis and visualization area here at Arizona State University, and we're doing some really important thinking about our data governance and structures. And so I'm just excited to hear this session and hear your perspectives.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for taking time. Josh.
Josh Johnson. I'm a data architect in ASU's University Technology Office. I work next door to Elizabeth, and I work with data architecture and governance.
Excellent. Great. Nice to meet you. And then do you want to try Ryan again?
Hey, there we go. Hey, Ryan and everyone, good to see you. Ryan Hendricks with Arizona State University Technology Office, and I work with the Cloud Innovation Center, which is a partnership between Arizona State University and Amazon Web Services over here at SkySong.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. And Donna, real quick.
Hi, I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I'm your MC for the day and CISO here at ASU.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. It's nice to meet you too.
Yeah, and then a few more. Tristan.
Hi, I'm from UTO. I'm in the creative and communications team. I'm also kind of hopping around, just taking notes for our storytelling efforts over at UTO.
Excellent. Edward?
Hi, I'm Edward Garcia. I'm the Director of IT at the law school here at ASU and work closely with UTO on lots of things.
Excellent.
So
nice to meet you, Edward.
You too, sir.
And then Amin?
Sure. My name is Amin Kazi, and I am a data architect. And right now I'm working with UC San Diego.
Great. Thank you, Amin. Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
That's all right.
So let's go ahead and just dive in. I like to start off data governance conversations with this quote. I really like it because I think it helps to modernize what data governance really is, right? Governance without implementation is just documentation, and documentation is instantly obsolete. So when I think about this, I'm thinking about, lack of having a framework or having tools to help operationalize the overall effort to make sure that we're having things that are coming to life and that continue on. So I think about all these different projects that I've been involved in the past, where it's recorded in a nice, project document uploaded to SharePoint and not necessarily ever looked at again. So how do we kind of continue to have that knowledge live on across the organization and continue to apply context and for other people to really kind of understand, what that is. And that's really kind of what the gist of what we're talking about today around, kind of the frameworks and the drivers of data governance. So we'll hit into our first topic, really around those different drivers of governance in 2021 specific to higher ed. And, the thing is overall, the role of the chief data officer and how we've seen is really beginning to shift. I think historically, the CDO role used to be more kind of aligned towards risk and compliance, kind of the regulatory side, but now it's really kind of broadened, especially in higher ed. Now things are driven more towards, what are those institutional goals, those different institutional objectives that are out there, and having the CDO now being kind of anchored to those, because data has become that much more important, of being able to understand student experience or the different institutional research programs that are going on and how those objectives are really tying into there. And then to layer into that, we now have this ability around data sharing practices. 80% of organizations with a high ability to be able to innovate is correlated to being able to have strong data sharing practices that also are there in order to help support that. So, Mark, I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts on what you've seen in the industry that are related to kind of the role in the CDO.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, it's just the landscape in higher ed is just becoming extremely competitive, right? So you're fighting for revenue, you're fighting for students, you're fighting for that best student experience, across the university. And kind of the idea here today is to talk about governance and how that really can impact those types of goals and objectives that you might have.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. And both Mark and I have a really great opportunity in our roles that we have of being able to speak with a variety of other institutions and myself even kind of broader across a variety of industries and geographies. And, it kind of boils down into 4 overall categories of what we see that are beginning to drive governance, and to kind of break that down around, number 1, self-service analytics. So when I think about this, I'm really thinking about this whole concept of data democratization, the data sharing practices that we just talked about. Then we go into more, regulations that could be either set by, the government, such as CCPA for California, GDPR for the EU, but then also some more institutional specific ones that are being kind of abided by in order to help support different types of funding activities, such as the CARES Act. And then we get more into the institutional enablement aspect that's there, right? How are you able to respond to the COVID crisis that we're finally kind of on the tail end of, it seems like, coming out of, or a different student experience and recruitment and student retention, as well as overall faculty management. So that's where we really look at from an institutional perspective. And then last but not least is that digital transformation, or I like to think of it more of a technology modernization, right? Getting away from some of those different legacy systems that the institutions have into more of a modernized, agile stack of technologies that are there. And all of these different pieces are going to be important to other people, kind of depending on where they might sit in the institution, but they all share kind of a common theme of governance really being the framework that's going to allow these different use cases or drivers to be able to come together to be successful. And the thing is, within an institution, is the understanding already exists within the people that you have in the institution. All we're really doing from a governance perspective is we're giving people a framework to be able to capture and connect and share that overall understanding of the data, right? We're not trying to create new processes in order to make it more complex. We're trying to embed governance into those existing processes, kind of from a more non-invasive approach. So I think historically people have thought of governance as this top-down, iron fist approach, but it's really not. We're just really trying to turning on the people who are really doing that and really empowering them, and then enabling to be able to be successful in that role. I'm going to go ahead and share just share a video, you know,
Hey,
real
Jim.
quick. This came from, yeah.
Ryan, I just wanted to add one thing to your point there, the captured, connected, and shared. And, you know, we like to call it grassroots, and I think we got some examples of it later on, but really we're moving away from this top-down monolithic approach to doing governance and really try and get it into the institution bottom up, you know, grassroots, you know, so captured, connected, and shared. And I think the video that Ryan's going to share actually kind of gets to that essence of it. So sorry, Ryan, to interrupt.
Oh, no, absolutely, Mark. I think that's great context. And so this is a video that was done. Well, it's not a higher ed institution. It is from the Bank of Ireland. This is something that Barry Green, who was the chief data officer for Bank of Ireland, he created a video in order to help educate and promote data governance across the bank. But I think this video is really great because it doesn't necessarily go specifically into examples in the financial institution, but it really ties back to those overall use cases that are there. And pay attention to the video as well, because you'll notice something in there. They never mentioned data governance once in the video. It's really tied back to that experience within their organization. So here, we'll cue the video up.
Our business is powered by data. Our customers create data every day worldwide. We have huge amounts of it in lots of different formats and of varying quality. So when we try and fit it together, it doesn't seem quite right. We need to manage our data better. But this isn't easy. It will require long-term change. Good data is critical if we are to create a customer-centric bank. In response to customers' changing needs, we are transforming our digital capability and providing simpler, seamless interactions across every channel. All of this change is powered by data. Without a strong data foundation, the group will not be able to fulfill this objective, now or in the future. Data can help drive improved customer experience, cost efficiency, and regulator confidence. To get these foundations in place, let's think of our data like a supermarket. Different types of data enter the supermarket from different places and is offloaded in a staging area. There, it gets labelled and checked to make sure it passes quality control. If it doesn't, the supplier is informed and the goods are replaced. Data is packaged and grouped together in the stockroom. Because the data is well labelled and organised, staff can easily find the data they want. Even when it's on the shelf, the data is continuously checked to ensure staff can always access quality data. And if staff cannot find what they're looking for or have a problem, there is someone they can go to for help. Meaning the products customers see on the shelves are always backed up by good data. Sounds easy, right? Well, it doesn't always work that way. Things can go wrong. Imagine a supermarket with a poor supply chain. Some trucks arrive with only a few boxes, some with the wrong boxes. Some might not even arrive in trucks at all. Imagine if the products had the wrong labels, or no labels at all. Each box would need to be opened up to see what's inside, and some products would be completely inappropriate. The stockroom would be chaos. Products that hadn't been quality controlled would end up on shelves, with unsuspecting customers taking products that don't work as advertised or put them at risk. And what if customers had problems, questions, or requests? If staff don't have access to good information, they may be unable to provide answers, or even worse, may offer incorrect direction or advice. Customers might be tempted to leave our supermarket altogether and go straight to other supermarkets for their products. Because of the need for good data management, the bank has invested in a group data office so that we can build a consolidated, managed, and measured data foundation, where everyone contributes to the foundation in order to use data to power our business. Everyone has responsibilities when creating, transforming, and consuming data. Your data office, building the foundations for a customer-centric, forward-looking bank.
So I really like that video again, because I do think it kind of transcends across a variety of different industries, especially at the end there, where you kind of saw those different building blocks that were coming in and talking about things that are important to, you know, that foundation there around, you know, data quality, data that's fit for purpose, the accessibility to data, is the data secure, and as well as kind of the golden record of that. So just wanted to go ahead and help, you see how, other organizations have been able to promote data governance within. Now we want to start to talk about some of the different institutional challenges that we see across higher ed, and really then kind of going into a little bit more around the different framework that we see successful being able to put in place to really help to operationalize this effort. So the first one is really around the higher education challenges, and this comes from the CTI team. So Mark, I'll let you go ahead and take it away and kind of talk to the challenges that you and your team see on a daily basis.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Exactly. So, what we see, across the university or institutions, right? All the different offices are trying to have certain questions answered, right? So if I'm in admissions, I'm trying to understand and predict acceptance rate, or if I'm in, financial aid, what does my exposure, look like from an expense standpoint? Getting into operations, right? Last year, we just, we kind of went through the pandemic, and we were really trying to figure out, where that critical data was in order to make sure that I'm bringing students and staff and faculty back on campus, right? So all these questions get kind of lumped into what I call this analytics demand, that the Office of the Provost is helping drive, the institutional research is helping drive. And so that demand, right, of the analytics demand of analytics, really kind of, when you think about it from a data perspective, kind of going back to that video, is like, you need to have things identified, categorized, to be able to understand how to get to that so I can answer the question. So we see that, there's a data integration problem, a data quality problem, and a governance problem. But, starting to break that down, we'll break it down today from a framework standpoint. And, how do you get to this governance so that I can identify and define what data looks like to ensure I have quality there, how my data is being integrated across my ecosystem, and then more importantly, how does that get shared out to all the individual offices, right? So really trying to break down those barriers as we kind of move forward, to really help support the university and getting back to those goals, right? Helping drive that student experience, making sure that end to end, from everything at the beginning of the student life cycle to when they become an alumni, that experience actually is honed in a way, and it's driven by data.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mark. And, other things that we've seen, and again, I think it's really critical, it kind of ties back to, one of the earlier slides that we talked about around, driving value, within an institution. And, this is kind of an interesting way to be able to, a thought process of breaking it down is, right, we take a look at these, high level use cases that are out there around, poor, student or faculty experience, or from a donor perspective, or difficulty in being able to find the right data, or lack of insight into, the students, the faculty, overall kind of enrollment and things of that nature. But, those are kind of the high level use cases. But what really needs to be done is not looking at the symptom, but getting to the actual root cause of what is driving these different use cases. And so this is just kind of an example of, hey, if we're able to come in here and begin to solve these root causes, now it's going to organically begin to resolve, not just one, but maybe two or three of the other use cases that are kind of above that. And that's really kind of what we recommend, is continuing to just get down to, and, what are the actual causes of the symptoms that you're feeling, which are essentially kind of the use cases. And let's go ahead and take a targeted focus on getting to that. So from a framework perspective, I really like what CTI has done and what they've come to the table with, of being able to really kind of talk about, how do they approach data governance? And Mark talked a little bit earlier around kind of that grassroots approach, and then how that really begins to feed into some of these other pieces. And so, Mark, I'll let you go ahead and kind of elaborate on that a little bit further.
Yeah. So, as Ryan pointed out, understanding those root causes is important, but then kind of getting to some initial use cases to explore, right? That grassroots, kind of governance process and what that means. So being able to take a use case, drive it end to end from a data governance standpoint. having, those roles defined as part of that. So, if you think about the stewards, the, subject matter experts, data owners, catalog users or users of the data, consumers of the data. So, knowing and understanding what those roles are as it fits inside of that grassroots governance process. Being able to establish, kind of that comprehensive inventory of data assets, right? So getting back to that ecosystem and, where is my data coming from? Is it coming from, PeopleSoft, the campus solutions? Is it Banner, Lucian Banner from a student information system, or my Slate data? So again, how does that ecosystem come together, and how are those assets all being, cataloged and scanned? And then being able to document it, right? So very important, right? Getting to documenting that ecosystem. So having those, the data ops part of it is part of the process. And so now I've got inventory of business policies and data policies, and I know where my ecosystem is, so I know where my assets are. And then, where does the university generate value from their data, right? So is it driving donations? Is it about recruiting better, higher quality students? How am I ensuring I'm getting to certain student success rates and stuff like that? So again, making sure we're that data is helping to generate value. And then, build that internal trust, right? How many times have we shared information and you don't trust it? So if we're pushing data up to the provost office, it has to be trustworthy, right? It has to have, it's going to go through a process by which, the quality is being addressed. We understand where it's coming from in the ecosystem, and the definitions are all consistent and, consolidated. And then lastly, how are we driving that governance strategy? So we kind of take this tactical approach, but really it's thinking about it strategically. So that adoption, of data governance is kind of key to success from an approach standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And I think that really kind of ties in, you talked about, driving a strategy, but having a tactical approach. And, oftentimes we get asked the question as far as like, well, how do I get started? We have all of these different use cases that are out there, and we're kind of getting inquiries that are coming from all different areas of an institution. And I really like to use this as kind of a business opportunity heat map, right? We're going to go ahead and create a value score as well as a complexity score against that, so we can better kind of understand. And we have a saying here at Informatica when it comes to governance, as far as think big, start small, and scale fast. And so this is something that I actually used as a practitioner prior to joining Informatica, being able to get kind of a better idea of where do we want to focus. And so you want to be able to avoid the things that are going to be a high investment and low business value, and start to turn to those things that are going to be a low investment overall, but are going to go ahead and return a higher business value on that. And so kind of the example here is, honing in on graduation rate as a use case for that. And this is actually a real life example of a graduation rate from a customer from CTI, of how they were actually calculating that. And so, Mark, you're welcome to go ahead and just I'll just blow this out for you, of how they supported that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, we see this all the time, right? Graduation rate is one. How GPAs are being calculated across the university, everything from undergrad to the individual schools or the graduate school. In this case, it's taking graduation rates from the financial aid office and then from the registrar's office. The two of them come at it from a different perspective. Where like financial aid's thinking about it from 2 terms of full tuition, where registrar is really about that completion getting. So you could have graduation rate coexist, but as long as you're terming it contextually, then one is financial aid graduation rate versus one is the actual registrar's graduation rate. So again, having kind of the ability to have definitions coexist, but they're very specific to contextual business needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, tying that all together of really kind of putting the people into this. And so we talked a little bit earlier around, look, people already exist, the understanding already exists. It's really a matter of tying that together. And so this is kind of more of a operationalized model of what it really kind of looks like from institutional data governance. So Mark, feel free to go ahead and elaborate a little bit further on this slide as well, please.
Yeah, so there, think about it like I'm trying to ask a question around retention rates. So I'm looking for data to be able to support my analysis. And so we talk about onboarding those assets and making sure that the ecosystem is documented, right? Assessing the quality of the data, right? So where is that trusted data? What does it look like? How do I make sure it fits what I'm trying to do, from answering that question around retention rates as it relates to student success? So having an environment where I actually can search, right? So search that ecosystem, where I've got data in Slate and it's coming from Canvas from learning management standpoint. I might have a Workday instance up and running. So being able to search, that data to kind of get to where those definitions might already exist. And then collaboration. So how do I collaborate? How do I ask questions? How do I provide reviews of content? So I may ask a question around something that's being used that I'm seeing in the ecosystem. And, I can get the answers from the data stewards or from the data owners, as those questions kind of come part of it. And then the consumption end of it, right? How do I consume that data? The Dean of Student Services, and being able to push that information out to a consumer. So certifying that data so it can be consumed, and it might be consumed in kind of the concept of a marketplace, right? I've identified a data set that's sitting in a series of dashboards and Tableau, and you know what? It's answering a lot of the questions I need to answer, but I want to actually do some different analysis. So you might actually have to consume it a little bit differently. But again, the thought process here is you're kind of iterating through this process of trying to answer a question, taking a use case, understanding the quality, ability to search and collaborate with the team, and then consume it.
Yeah, and that's at the institutional level, and then when you kind of go down more deeper into the organizational level, right? This is kind of a little bit more of kind of what a workflow would look like, right?
Exactly. And so, a lot of people, so you think a little more top down, business glossaries, how do I certify definitions? There is a process flow behind that. And how do I review and approve it, kind of get it published out so I can monitor it, and then maintain it over time. So like that video kind of talked about making sure that I'm maintaining, my inventory, and that inventory is your data assets, and make sure that all that stuff is kind of maintained in an environment. So again, addressing this kind of gets back to addressing more of the top-down view of the organization from a governance standpoint.
Yeah, perfect. And then kind of the next common question, Mark, that comes up is, okay, well, sounds like a lot. Like, what does a journey of a governance program in higher ed typically look like when you're thinking about getting it stood up to kind of being in a operationalized state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the important thing is, you have to have adoption in mind, in particular, of taking on data governance, right? And we've seen a lot of failed efforts in higher ed where, we've had the committee organized for the past 2 to 3 years, and well, where are you? And we've got some glossary definitions. They're sitting up in SharePoint or sitting out in a Teams channel or something of that nature. So it's really important when you think about the journey is have those objectives and goals set up front, right? Knowing exactly where I want to go. Take we talk about use cases. So you take, there could be a couple of mix of use cases, and we're seeing some interesting things because there's a lot of institutions that are migrating their ERP system into Workday. Workday seems to be the hot place to kind of migrate, the HR and the finance data. So that use case actually is one we're seeing quite broadly to help support the migration of kind of that, going from Oracle EBS over into Workday. But it can be very specific to something in finance, grants and projects. So how do I take those set of, a couple of stakeholders, map out the priorities, understand what that use case becomes, and then we engage the stakeholders, right? We take them through a process. So we have this concept of, 25-5. So what are the 25 questions the stakeholders are trying to achieve from a data and a governance perspective, and what are the questions they're trying to get answered from a data standpoint? And then being able to start to define those roles, how they fit into the governance program, identification of that use case, and then validate that plan against the use case that you're trying to achieve. And then putting in, then once you're there, now you can start to inventory those assets, right? So document that data ecosystem. But more importantly, how am I going to define success, right? How do I assess and measure, the quality of data, but how do I identify success as part of that use case in defining what that is, and then leverage that scoring and rating process, kind of once we start to catalog. And then when you start to execute, right? So we think through the execution, we're kind of introducing the concept to a series of stakeholders. We're kind of leading them down this path. We're getting identification of, goals and objectives. And then we actually start to do the cataloging of those assets and actually demonstrate how that fits inside of in the organization. And so they can actually see it hands-on, basically put fingers to the keyboards and be able to see and search. And so, if I'm looking for data around retention rate or looking for data around enrollment, I have the ability to do that now from a glossary standpoint. And then continuously iterating, right? So meaning expand those use cases, introduce it to the broader parts of the university. So, you might do it across a couple of schools within finance, as an example, and then you might start to expand it out to some of the other areas. Let's get into admissions, let's get into financial aid, or et cetera. So again, the idea here is you iterate through this process.
Yeah, and I like where you're hitting on that marker on kind of the iterate, right? Because governance does not have an end date, right? It's
Nope.
not an IT project, or it's not a, siloed activity, right? There's change management that's involved, and it's kind of embedding this and kind of changing the culture related to that as kind of an ongoing effort in order to support those different data management, or, I even like to describe it as like a data literacy program across institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing I just want to point out, this says here, one last bullet on this launch adoption strategies. Just want to highlight a couple of thoughts there, is that, providing tips and tricks around governance, providing open office hours to talk through what you're trying to achieve, having videos available that, kind of really, lowers that hurdle and concern around taking on all this governance nomenclature as it fits in the institution.
Yeah, I think, a lot of this then ties into, how do I operationalize this effort, right? Getting away from that previous quote around, and documentation is instantly obsolete.
Right.
I mean, how are we really, leveraging, operationalizing that now? And so I just want to just kind of talk, a couple of slides here around, how does Informatica begin to solve for this? Hearing these different drivers, the challenges, knowing the personas and the frameworks that are involved, what have we done to be able to quickly enable institutions to get up and running with their governance program? And so how we see it in making our approach different, we break this down into 4 categories. 1, the overall automation that's there, leveraging the AI and the machine learning to go out there and do the heavy lifting for you, being able to find and discover and auto tag that data that you have within your organization, and then automatically being able to bring that back and apply more business or institutional context around that data. But at the same time, giving you something that's going to go ahead and scale, and you can go think about it as kind of modularized to go ahead and scale as you begin to grow or mature within your program. But then the extensibility aspect of that is a significant savings on the IT side of the organization, because everything's already fully integrated in order to do that. So you're not having to bring in developers or architects or people along those lines. So it's a big cost savings, which also leads to further agility within your program that you can really begin to go ahead and get started on day one. I really like to think about this as a configurable versus customizable. And we are in the configurable stage of where we already have that pre-built model out of the gate in order for you to be able to leverage. And so what does this really look like, right? This is really the governance aspect is what sits in the middle and allows the institutions to answer those different questions that might be coming. What data do we have? What does it mean? Where does it come from? How do we get access to it? What's the quality of that data? But it's supported by the catalog, right? Again, going out there, being able to scan, discover, find that data, being able to bring that back to context, but now leveraging also data quality through the lens of not just looking at data quality, how we traditionally used to look at data quality, which was through the lens of what's the data quality on this table or on this attribute or this database or whatever else that might be. But now we're taking data quality, and since we can attach that to the data, and we know how that data is now attached to a process, to a policy, how institutions are using that, you can now look at data quality through the lens of, hey, what is my policy on or my process of student retention look like? And now I can measure the data quality specific against student retention, which I think becomes really, really powerful through those different governance councils. And then last, we have our data privacy management aspect, right? This is going down that level deeper of being able to enforce those different policies or regulations when you think about GDPR, CCPA, being able to find those different subjects within your system, being able to quickly and automatically support those different requests that are out there. And then lastly, delivering the business value to the end user, right? Those end users, those non-technical users within an organization that are looking for things such as, I want to report on faculty data, or I want to report on donor data, but where do I go for that? Well, you can go into the marketplace because that's going to be your trusted repository of reports for the institution. And you can understand at a high level, what's the data quality? How's it being used across the organization? Who do I go to for that? And then through that online-like shopping experience, you simply just check out, and that kicks off a workflow for approval for you to then have access to that data. So I want to take a pause because I know Mark and I have done quite a bit of talking over the last 40 or so minutes, but we want to move this into more of an open forum question and start to get some dialogue going with the attendees and hear a little bit from you as it relates back to what we talked about. So just kind of curious, and feel free to choose any one of these questions, but what are you hearing at the at ASU when it comes to governance? So there's different questions around data. Who's being asked to start to solve these different challenges, right? Where does that responsibility begin to live? And where are the actual questions coming from, those challenges for that? And what does leadership support overall look like in order to help support a governance or data democratization or a data literacy program? So would love to just open it up to the audience and get some thoughts.
Do we have everyone off mute?
Enabled.
Yeah, Kevin, would you be able to unmute people?
I enabled unmute yourself.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
I can't really speak a lot on this subject because basically I oversee everything at the law school and try to abide by the governance and security compliance standards that are enforced at the University Technology Office level. So obviously I'm in a lot of those discussions, but we kind of rely on, I can probably speak from a unit perspective, where we rely on them to put these things in place and also provide some feedback on different things. And so, yeah, so it's just interesting because these are all challenges that we all face here at this university, because this is a very large place. And so I totally agree with you. Having a framework and engaging and making a collaborative effort is very important. I think transparency is very important, and to help us all meet the regulatory standards and compliance standards that we need to abide by. So.
Yeah, I appreciate the thought there, Edward. So a question for you. So you mentioned, you're on the law school side at ASU for this. So is your role more of kind of a stakeholder or steward into the larger, governance program of where you're providing some stuff back into the program, but you're really kind of more following the policies and the direction that's coming out of the governance office?
Yeah, we try to follow mostly the policies and things that come out of that office, right? And so, yeah, you nailed it exactly. So obviously, we have our own data because we have our own kind of specific applicants that come in through a third-party system, and then we push data into PeopleSoft and such. And so, yes, so we kind of lean to that, lean on the main University Technology Office to get this information and abide by the policies that they've implemented. So,
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's
appreciate it.
It's tough, it's tough. This is a very big place, and every unit operates differently and has different goals and different audiences. And so, as you know, you outlined many of the challenges and obstacles. And so the session sounded very interesting, and everything that you provided resonates with everything that I see. So it's very consistent, and I'm sure we're not the only one, but we're just, obviously we're a very large university and so, but definitely. And the other thing I wanted to say is, this is not, like you said, you're never gonna be like, okay, you're all done. This is always going to be evolving. You're always going to be trying to get to that, reach that goal. So it's just a constant, it's like being on a treadmill, right? You're never done. You're just going and going and trying to, reach certain marks and certain goals and such, but you're always on the treadmill trying to better and better and better and better. So it's always evolving.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great analogy. Ryan, I saw you kind of came off mute real quick. Did you have something you wanted to say as well?
Yeah, hopefully that was for me. Yeah, thank you. Ryan Hendricks here, again, with the Technology Office, the Cloud Innovation Center. So sort of related to this area of where are these challenges coming from, I wanted to ask you both, Ryan and Mark, and by the way, thanks for the presentation. I thought there was some really good insight there. When we talk about data governance, I mean, I saw the usual, define roles, data assets, management processes, policies, et cetera. What I'd be interested in hearing is, so where are the challenges coming from? Here's two things I think that are sort of, we're seeing emerging. And one great example of this is like the Novus Innovation Corridor at ASU. We're seeing new public-private partnerships, maybe in a way that we haven't before, that I think are potentially bringing new challenges to how we govern data, because obviously private sector and public sector, not always the same goals. Not that they're in conflict, but there's sometimes different, obviously, strategic directions that they're heading. And then, extending beyond that, this is sort of a long-winded question, but I do actually have a question here. Really, I'm looking to know if you've seen any trends emerging either in public-private partnership, or we're the Smart City Cloud Innovation Center. There's all these new data sources with things like IoT emerging. Again, looking at the Novus Innovation Corridor, is data governance the same as it always has been, or are there new trends emerging with things like public-private partnership and IoT in data governance today? So I'll leave it at that and let you guys comment on it.
Ryan, you want to go first? You're on mute.
Oh,
I can tell.
There we go. Sorry. I think that, what's really kind of changed from that example, Ryan, is we've moved away from again, that top-down approach. And we're really kind of coming at it, like Mark's talked about, from that grassroots approach. And so we're taking those different use cases, we're bringing people in as a part of that and kind of organically starting to grow that governance program and kind of developing that muscle out of that, versus kind of trying to bring everything at once from, these different, I'm thinking about like research institutions, for example, and kind of going for like licensing of products or working with, other pharmaceutical industries and things of that nature. But it's also being able to now tag and understand that data as far as, well, how are we classifying that data? Where's the data coming from? Where does it actually go to? So also being able to understand the lineage with that is something that I think is a bit different than when I think about kind of the traditional governance model. But Mark, I think you had something you wanted to say as well.
Yeah, I mean, where we're seeing it is that cross section of like a medical school or a school of medicine, right? So, you're seeing the research element of it, you're now touching on patients, but then you're also getting into the pharmaceutical side of it as well, right? So now you're really truly bringing kind of the university to the private sector and some elements of public, if you're actually, talking about the university, who they're aligned with from a hospital standpoint, depending on where you are. So that's what we're seeing a lot of it. And so, governing that, it becomes a very broad use case, but you can still fundamentally break it down, right? And grassroots it is how you kind of come at it. And so depending on how you look at what you're achieving, so it might be the research part of the school, in particular for the School of Medicine, and then how it extends out to some of the other areas, it might be the private sector.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you both very, very much. Appreciate that insight. I think that's a really important observation to make in terms of defining use cases and that ground up approach, which isn't always easy. Maybe one of the hardest sort of practices to crack is like data governance and doing that ground up, because we think of that as such a top down process, right? So that's
right.
Those are great insights. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
And Ryan, I would make sure that, you know, as you're thinking about kind of that grassroots approach there, and kind of how you mentioned kind of being able to break into that and gain success, it is important to kind of look upward, you know, kind of in a way of how are we aligning to the institution's overall goals and objectives there, because
right.
that's the story that you want to be able to tell, and the what's in it for me story, and getting people to be able to come in and adopt what you're trying to achieve versus something that might be just kind of very much departmental.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
And I will say we are also going to go ahead and you know, we'll share this this deck. I'm pretty sure the decks are being distributed, but you know, you guys will all have a copy of this deck to be able to use. So recognize that we're out of time and want to be respectful of everyone's time. So you know, we're here to help you, both Informatica and CTI. You know, we're not just a consulting and a technology you know, company, but we bring a lot of thought leadership in the space and can help in a variety of different ways, from, you know, gaining adoption and implementation planning and helping to develop those different use cases and bringing people together, as well as helping to support from a technology perspective. And I know CTI, you know, really specializes in this place, and they have a variety of other educational offerings that they're able to bring to the table in order to help support whatever efforts at ASU.
Yeah.
And I think just,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Mark, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, we kind of bring an end-to-end kind of view to this, you know, student life cycle, discovery process, understanding architecture integration, how, you know, advanced analytics, everything from baseline kind of reporting, visualization to data science, you know, machine learning. And again, you know, that governance thing is key to all of this, right? That's kind of how we view this. So as Ryan said, you know, we're here to help, and we love doing these sessions. You know, we were excited by the fact that we could join the IT Summit for ASU, and hopefully everyone learned something today. And you know, feel free to, you know, reach out, ask questions, and you know, we'd be happily respond.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, I think, you know, the clients that you've worked with have you know, just kind of speak volumes to the work that you've done. And we also have some great content also on Informatica.com, right? This is all free. You don't have to be a customer in order to get this, but it really starts to talk around, you know, different data strategy workbooks, how to get started, what are some of these other playbooks that are out there in order to help support you. So again, you know, thank you for taking time, you know, out of your day. You know, appreciate the 50 minutes that you've dedicated with both Mark and I. And again, I hope you found that the you know, the content, the conversation was of value, and just wish you all, you know, the best in staying healthy and safe.